Hey, welcome. All right, so we're here with an office hours. It's been a minute since we've done one of these, so let's jump in. All right. So for those of you who don't know who have never been on an office hours, it's essentially just time to be able to connect during the week, talk about what's going on, talk about Sunday's message a little bit, a couple different things. So let's jump right into it. First off, I have a story I want to tell. Okay, so there's a story. There's this boy. He goes to Sunday school. He goes to kids' church, whatever version of the story, depending on what generation you grew up in church, I guess. So he goes to Sunday school. He comes home, and his mom's like, "Hey, so like, what'd you do in church today?" He's like, "Well, we had snacks, we played some games, and it was a lot of fun. Met some friends. It was good." And she's like, "Well, did you guys do anything else?" He's like, "Not really." And she's like, "Well, did the teacher teach a lesson?" He's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, so like, what'd you learn about?" He's like, "Oh, we learned about Noah and or Moses and them, crossing the Red Sea." And she's like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "Well, can you tell me the story you learned?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay." And so he's like, "All right, so Moses and the Israelites and they have to cross. They're stuck. Like they have to cross the Red Sea, but they can't because it's like an ocean. And then there's the Egyptians are coming up behind them, and so they're stuck. So Moses gets on the radio and he calls for help. And the GI Joes, they come in with their jets and they drop some bombs and it blows the water out of the way. But then before the water can come back in, then Optimus Prime comes in with the Autobots and they all transform together and they transform and they make these walls and they stop the water. And then they're able to go through on dry ground. And once they get through, then the Transformers transform back into their Autobot selves and their car versions. They drive away, and then the water fills back in, and the bad guys can't follow them anymore. And she's like, "That's what you learned about?" He's like, "Yep." She goes, "Are you sure that's how the teacher told that story?" And he goes, "Well, no, she said it a little bit different, but Mom, you wouldn't believe the way she told it." So we had some people over dinner last night, and that came up. I told them that story. I thought that was funny. It's been years since I've heard that story. So let's jump in with a few things. So what is coming up at Calvary? So we have the candlelight service, December 24th at 6 p.m. We're gonna have a candlelight service. You don't want to miss that. I mean, unless you hate Christmas. If you hate Christmas, stay away. Definitely miss this. But if you don't hate Christmas, if you're like the Grinch and your heart is two sizes too small, as long as you have a heart, I'm sure you will enjoy. I mean, he hated Christmas, but only because he wanted to love it and they didn't let him, right? So we're gonna have candlelight service December 24th, 6 p.m. You're gonna want to get here early. It's probably gonna be a packed house. Last year it was pretty full. We're expecting even more this year. It's gonna be great. The nursery kids are doing a song. Kind of. It's nursery. They're working on it. They're gonna do their best. It's gonna be adorable. Will it be the actual song and dance? Probably not, but it's gonna be adorable. You're gonna want to see that. Kids church is working on the song. There's rumors that the youth group is working on something. I don't know if they're gonna quite exactly how that's going. So there may be, the youth group may be doing a song. We have multiple people doing specials. I will have a very, very short Christmas message, like 5 minutes, which means even if I'm lying, it's only like 10 minutes long, but it's probably gonna be like 5 minutes. And then of course at the end we will end with the traditional candle lighting ceremony, and we'll be closed out with some live music on the piano, singing a Christmas song, Christmas carol. So it is going to be good. You don't want to miss that, again, unless you hate Christmas. So if you don't come, I'm just going to assume I'm going to put you down on the naughty list that you hate Christmas. December 22nd and 29th. Okay, so listen up. This is a very new announcement. We haven't even announced this on a Sunday yet. So December 22nd, so not this Sunday, but next Sunday, the Sunday before Christmas, and then the Sunday after Christmas, the 29th. Those 2 weeks only, we're going to do a combined service. So it's going to be a combined service at 10 a.m. So instead of doing a 9 a.m. and 11, we're just going to do a 10 a.m. for those 2 Sundays as we close out the year. And then when we go into January, we will go back to our 9 a.m. first service and 11 a.m. second service, which we will also start in January, which takes me to my third and final announcement of what's going on. Is we're doing something in January I'm calling it Everyday Sunday. This is where I should have had music from the Christian band Everyday Sunday queued up to start playing, but we don't have the rights to that. So Everyday Sunday. So what I'm doing is we will be having church every single day, twice a day in January. So the idea behind this is no matter who you are, you should be able to make a service. Like no matter what your schedule is, it's just making it so anyone and everyone can come and try out church. January, a lot of people are thinking like, hey, we really should get back into church. And then it's hard to find time. Things are busy, and then a couple months go by and then it's just like, well, maybe next year. So the idea is that way, everyone who's been thinking, we really need to get back into church. If you work weird hours, you're not able to come because you work on Sundays, you're just not able to be involved. Everyday Sunday, church every day, twice a day. You should have a time. Also, if you're invited, this is for those of you who want to invite people to church with you. Typically, when you invite someone, it's one of those, hey, I'd love to invite you to our church service. We're doing this thing. And they're like, oh, I'm busy that day. You're like, well, I didn't tell you what day it was. They're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll be busy. All right. Like it's just like an easy excuse. Oh, I'm busy, So this gives you can call their bluff. Don't lose friendships over this. Okay. But it does make it to where, almost anyone who has even a sliver of interest of making a service can make a service. So here's the schedule. Okay. This is what it's going to be. Mondays and Tuesdays, we're going to have an 11 a.m. and a 6 p.m. service. So if you don't work or you work nights, you can come and hit the 11 a.m. Monday or Tuesday. If you do work, but you get off, at 5, it gives you time to change, grab some food, whatever, come over. 6 p.m. service, Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesdays, there will be a 6 a.m. for those of you who I go to work at 7, I go to work at 8, we have school, whatever it is. Wednesdays, there'll be a 6 a.m. and then a 12 p.m. So most people, the 11 a.m. works as like a lunch break, but if not, we also have a 12 p.m. on Wednesdays. So you could literally just come over on your lunch break. They will be shorter services. They're not going to be, 2 hour, 2.5 hours. These are going to be an hour long, an hour and 10 minutes at max, probably going to be right about an hour long services. And then that puts us, okay, Thursdays and Fridays is also going to be, it's going to be the same as Mondays and Tuesdays. It'll be 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. Saturdays will be a 2 p.m. and a 7 p.m. for those of you who just like to sleep in and don't want to get up early. So we have a 2 p.m. and a 7 p.m. And then Sundays will be the same. We'll be back to the 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. services. So come on out, invite a friend, invite a coworker, whatever. It's a great time to come on out. So if you are watching, feel free to leave a comment. If you have a prayer request or a question or comment, if this is working right, they should pop up over here. I should be able to see them. Okay. Let's go through. I want to recap some stuff from Sunday. So the other thing about these office hours is it gives me a time to be able to touch on some things that maybe just didn't fit into the message. So I want to go over a few things that I was telling Doug earlier this morning, I had 15 pages of notes, of not notes, but of things to turn into notes. I picked like 2 of them, and that turned into another 15 pages of notes for Sunday, our Genesis 6 message. So there was a lot I couldn't cover. So I want to, I want to go over a couple things. First off is like historical mentions. Let me catch. I should have read through these historical mentions of some of these. So we talked about the idea of the Nephilim and these like men of renown, these supernatural, super strong giant of men, right? Some references. Okay, let me put it this way. You may be shocked to realize, okay, so if you grew up reading like Greek mythology, things like Hercules, like I remember growing up watching the Kevin Sorbo Hercules show, or the who's the Notebook guy, Ryan Gosling, the Young Hercules on Saturday morning Fox Kids, right? I think that was the other station actually. But these different stories of these Greek warriors, these demigods and gods, right? Well, those very likely were based on actual, not like literal people, but on actual events. So the idea is like these Nephilim were, you got to think, the ancient world, they saw these giants who had these extraordinary strength and speed and different things. Like the legends of this, very possibly continued on. So things like the Mount Olympus and the gods, because you think they look at these people like, oh, they must be gods. They're bigger, stronger, faster. They have these abilities, and so they could have very easily looked towards them as gods. And so these stories that, in all these different traditions have similar stories, right? You look at, the story of Gilgamesh and Hercules and some of these different things. So there's actually, if you're a fan of this stuff, there's actually a possibility that these things are based off of legends, off of truth, of actual, what you would consider like demigods running around, right? Except they were Nephilim. We know that David fought, Goliath, and Goliath would definitely fit into this. In fact, there was an episode, I think, of Xena I saw as a kid where like she met like a brother of Goliath, one of his, or a cousin or something, some giant who, they had special helmets that had like a middle piece because that's how, David knocked out Goliath and was able to cut off his head by hitting. So they had the protection because, we learned our lesson from that issue, that incident with Goliath. Oh, hold on. I just realized I forgot. 1 second. Okay, I totally forgot to switch the lighting over. I'm looking at it, I'm like, why does it look like that? It was the wrong lighting. In fact, that's even probably too bright. I'm still a little washed out. All right, let's hope that's better. If not, it's what we're gonna be stuck with. Okay. And so yeah, if you're a fan of those kind of things, that's kind of a fun little thing. We talked about Tartarus a little bit. The scripture was Peter 2:4, for if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but threw them down into Tartarus and delivered them into be kept in chains of darkness until judgment. We talked about that a little bit. The one thing I just want to talk about is, because if you look into that, some may say, well, that's just Tartarus. Yeah, it's that one instance, but he's just talking about hell. He's not talking about something separate than hell. So I have a note here. Some translations translate the word Tartarus as hell, but it's actually different from the word Gehenna. So it's not the same thing. I have that Second Peter in here twice. So yeah, that idea is like those are actually different words. Like Tartarus, that word is only used. It's all throughout Greek mythology. It's only used in the Bible that one time in 2 Peter 2:4, and it's a very different word than Gehenna. The way it's referred to, it's pretty obvious that like it's a reference to something different than what we think of as hell. So just to kind of clarify that a little bit. Okay, so let's have some fun. Okay. Let's have a little bit of fun with this. Okay, so talking about this, some people believe. Okay, so we have the story in Genesis 6. We did cover this of the hold on, let me pull this back up so I can kind of see. It's right here. There we go. Some people believe that. Okay, let me back up. We have the story in Genesis 6 where, the fallen angels with the humans, and it makes the Nephilim, right? And then that ancient world perceived them to be like gods. Like, oh my goodness, like super tall, super strong, 6 fingers on and 6 toes. Like, these are gods, right? And then some believe, Chuck Missler actually talks about this as a possibility, and he's actually pretty well respected about the idea of how, what if these, like, not those, they're locked up, but like, what if we are seeing a return of some of this? And this time when people who have seen them and been exposed to them, rather than thinking that they're gods, because we live in a very different age and very different like ideas, that is why there's so many encounters about aliens and in alien sightings. You're like, okay, Pastor, you've lost your mind. That's why I just said this is fun, right? That's why I didn't make it into the Sunday version. But yeah, so some believe that these fallen angels have returned, but unlike Noah's day, we don't view them as gods, but as angels. So here's one of the key things. In Noah's day, fallen angels had knowledge and abilities that men couldn't comprehend, and so believe them to be gods and their half-human offspring to be demigods. Today we have reports of creatures and beings, invaders, who have far superior technology and can surpass. These were not my. These notes were not written for presenting, so I'm trying to have to figure out. I wrote them quickly. Surpass all known physical limitations. So we got things like, right, with aliens, right, like faster than light travel, unknown materials with fantastical properties. I was just in Roswell at the National UFO Museum, and that was one of the things they talked about is like in the supposed crash site in Roswell, like the materials were weird. Like they had like this a certain kind of metal, and which is not the element that makes it up is not found anywhere on Earth, and so it's this unknown element with engravings in it. But then they also talk about like then there was this like it felt like tinfoil, but you couldn't burn it, you couldn't break it. It was like it was really light and like tinfoil, but really strong and durable, right? So they simply, oh, these are from aliens. Well, so that was one. Incredible speeds. Okay, that they can travel, right? There's reports they can travel at incredible speeds. They can come to a complete stop. So going, like where fighter jets can barely keep up with them, and then boom, they just stop. Like that defies the laws of physics. Make 90-degree turns at those speeds, just be going, Mach 3 in one direction, and then boom, make an immediate right turn. These are things that defy the laws of physics. Being tangible or intangible, right? At will. Sometimes they're solid, sometimes they're not. Sometimes, like like the military would shoot at, and it would just go right through a ship, right? Some reports describe it as they were part in our world and part in another. So yeah, it's just interesting, right? Just an interesting thing. Just people say the Bible's boring, right? Well, now we're talking about aliens. We're talking about super beings on Sunday. Now we're talking about aliens. So it's an interesting thing. What's really interesting is how many like confirmed, like if you actually, I was listening to Chuck Missler talk about this, how many like legitimate like alien sightings there are. Like, yes, if you go through them, like a certain percentage are like a hoax and are fake, but how many are like well documented, like reliable people who are, unlike just so many thousands of these reports, and then a lot of them military based, where like when I was at the museum in Roswell, like how it was initially reported as like basically UFOs, and then later they changed it to the weather balloon story after someone else got involved. How many, like now we live in a time where so much of the UFO stuff has been declassified, which like I believe at this point, like the government has basically said, let me search. Does the government acknowledge UFOs? I'm pretty sure, like I never looked into this, I probably should have, that they've like declassified stuff, right? Like there's all kinds of, the Pentagon eventually issued an unofficial report from AARO that found there was no evidence of a secret program, and stated the government has no evidence that UAPs are extraterrestrial in origin. Okay, I should have done my research ahead of time. Did the government confirm aliens exist? Because there was a few years ago, I remember like the big thing about how like they oh, this is gonna play audio. Don't play audio. Don't play. And there we go. Let's just get off this. Right? There was like the declassified stuff that came out. So are aliens real? I don't know. Like, or if so, are they? I don't know. It's something that's interesting, right? Something interesting to look into. Something that's interesting that's out there. But yeah, if you haven't heard that theory before, some people believe, and I don't know if Chuck Missler actually believes that, or if he just went through, but I heard an entire thing on angels and demons that he talked about, where he talked about like how much like evidence there is for like, accounts and stuff, and even government documents and stuff that have been issued. So just something kind of fun. Like I said, stuff that didn't end up making it into the main message. I think you can see why, right? There's really no edification in terms of like, I'm going to preach on this on Sunday, but it's kind of fun to talk about sometimes. It's those things that like, you get into a Bible study, you get to talk about like the periphery things, the things that like maybe there's not time on to make it into a sermon notes, but is kind of interesting to discuss and go over. So just wanted to bring some of those things up a little bit, whether it's the the mythological characters being based off of, because just about every civilization has a flood legend, right? About a great flood. So these ideas that like, oh, these things in the Bible really happened, and then there were as the flood happened and then everyone went out after the Tower of Babel, and all these different civilizations started throughout the world, they all had remembered these things and had these stories passed down, which is why they all have their own versions and legends of what actually happened in the account in in the Bible. So like the idea that like Hercules and the Greek gods, and then other cultures with they're all based off of like, people remember there being these fallen angels, which they thought of as gods, and their offspring as being these gigantus, whatever, these demigods, right? So kind of a fun thing to kind of think about and talk about a little bit. So, I with all my notes that I wrote, I didn't really have a way to end this. So I'll have to plan that better next time. But this is something I'm wanting to do. I'm going to start doing these every Wednesday at 10. It's just a good time to be able to get on here, hang out with you guys a little bit. Feel free to jump on, ask questions. If there's prayer requests, we will pray over those as well. It's something that I've done sporadically in the past, these office hours, but I want to really make it a consistent Wednesdays at 10 thing that we can hang out. So it's 10:30, so half hour. Just discuss, how service went, talk about upcoming events, different things. And we'll add more and more segments as we get in here and interact. I'll probably start bringing on some guests here at some point, and just kind of have fun with it and just kind of check in the middle of the week. And yeah, so with that, that's all I've got. So we are going to log off.